What's up, everyone? It's Henry here. Thank you for tuning in. This is going to be one of the best podcasts I've ever done, hands down, because not only do I admire the hell out of this guy, but he's a dear friend. And he sells a ton of freaking real estate. Number one team with EXP in the state of New Jersey, sells hundreds of millions of dollars a year in real estate, but also just like the most genuine guy I've ever met. And I'm excited for him to share his knowledge, his wisdom with all of y'all who are trying to build out your own teams. Because, I mean, how many people are on your team right now? Just curious.
We have 42 in New Jersey, and then we launched in Chicago over the summer, and I think there's about 7, 8, or 9 there.
Okay, so a team of 50. Unfreaking believable. So I just want to say thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate you so much. It means the world to me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the intro. I feel like we can stop there too. It's all downhill from here.
It's all downhill. One big thing that I wanted to start off this podcast with, and I've actually got my notepad out because I wanted to, I'm being a little selfish here because I want to pick your brain on a few things. But yeah, I'd love to learn because, like, obviously, I know your journey pretty well, but not on a granular level, which is what I really want to get to know. I want to understand the process between like going from the single agent who was already doing, 30, 40, 50 mil to doing now 200 plus million a year with a team, because it is a very, very different dynamic.
I've been doing this since 2007. So you want me to take it back to like that single agent, or you want me to go back to the single agent when I realized I had to get serious about life?
Yeah. I mean, like, listen, I definitely want to dive into your childhood as well, honestly, just because I want to understand the kind of, the mindset that you had even getting into this ridiculous industry. But I just want to understand, like, what was going through your head? Like, you're doing, like, what were you doing at your top level as a single agent?
Yeah. So as a single agent, well, one thing, you and I are kind of cut from the same cloth, and we came through the same mentor, same team, that sort of thing. I broke off from that team in late 2015, and I started the SKOOL group in 2016 in the beginning, that January. One thing that I learned is I did not operate well as a single agent. I operate well on a team or with a team. I can't be a lone wolf. It's very forceful for me to do that without that accountability around me. Otherwise, I find myself just kind of laying on the couch all day, and the time is kind of going past. I'm sure a lot of realtors can relate to that. So I would say my peak year as a 100% solo agent would probably be like $10 million. Dave DeVoe brought me into his team in 2013. Prior to that, I was a single agent for quite some time at a mom and pop, and I wasn't even really selling homes. So 2013, I remember I closed 9 homes, and then I had always been on a team. Then I went rogue in 2015. Again, I think it was maybe 10 million or something. It wasn't a crazy number, but we were doing 10 million. I was doing 10 million a year as a single agent. I started the team 2016, and then I brought on Eric Goldfarb, and I want to say we did like 29, maybe 30 million. I think I made up a little bit more than 20 million of that myself. I know I went platinum that year on Circle of Excellence, and then that's where it really took off. And it was 46, 85, 123, 192. We'll go a little over 200 this year. We definitely felt the effects of the market. But last year in March of 2021, that's when I stepped off production. So I started putting all the leads, all the referrals that came into me, family, friends, it didn't matter where it came from. I drew a line in the sand and knew that if I were going to really grow this and love on the agents in the proper way, that was a move that I had to make. So
love it. So I want to get like really granular, right? Like, so for someone who maybe they're new with a buddy, or maybe they're doing, whether it's with a partner or just by themselves, they're doing, 10, 20 mil a year, 30 mil a year, right? They're making a few $100,000, and now they want to start a team. What would you like? Because I obviously know there's a gajillion ways to build a team. What do you feel like would be your advice for somebody who's looking to start a team, and maybe your biggest mistake that you've made in building a team?
So I would say there are 2 different types of teams. There is the team that is 100% built around the team leader. What I mean by that is there's somebody that comes into it. Like, let's say if you're already selling 20 million, 30 million, 40 million a year in real estate, then you either want to be out of production. So you want to have agents around you that are thriving. And that was my goal. Or you want to just basically have 20 assistants running around you and have a massive team set up that way. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. What I find is that knowing what you are is super important. So we personally run a test on that. One of my coaches, disc.com, Alex Andrew, he runs all profiles on everybody too. So we can find if they're high individualistic or high political. If they're high individualistic, they'll usually run more of an individualistic style team. It's going to be more about them. And you might see some realtors with massive billboards and stuff like that around town. That's an individualistic style team. The bodies that are within that team become a little more interchangeable. With ours, it's not necessarily about me. We've even talked about changing it from the SKOOL group to more of a universal kind of name. So it's really about the agents. And then a byproduct of their success is I make money, which is a fun way for me to have the world set up. What I find people often make mistakes wise is like they underhire, they bring in the wrong people. They don't have a funnel of agents that they should be bringing
their team. They're like, hey, I want to start a team. This person wants to join my team. He or she's part-time and they're also a school teacher and they're going to sell 3 homes this year, but I'm going to send all my leads to them and I'm going to focus on them with training and blah, blah, blah. I want those folks to win as well. But I think that the agents that work well on teams are the agents that want to play all out and they say, listen, I want to earn, $100,000 a year, 200,000, 300, 400. I want to earn $1 million, whatever their goal may be. What I look for in agents are people that want to hammer the accelerator, and we'll support them in that. And I think that that's along with the staff that doesn't want to support people hammering the accelerator. Those are like the 2 issues that I see people make all the time when they're starting a team.
Yeah. So I want to pick your brain on that, right? Let's talk about a quick mistake, because I have a couple questions that even reiterate about this kind of stuff. But what do you think is the big mistake that you made?
Gary Keller always said, hire slow, fire fast. I would hire fast, fire slow. We would get away from standards. We would get away from, I'll give you an example. As an agent, let's say it's a single agent listening in that sells 10 homes per year right now, or 100 homes. I don't care what it is. They have their hot leads that are looking to transact. And what I usually do for that is kind of figure out, who's looking to do a deal right now. And I'm constantly moving those people through that system. And I know that if I had 40 hot leads at any given time, and I'm working that and prospecting to add new people in and moving old ones out to nurture and stuff like that, that I will sell 40 homes that year. People don't do that with agents on their teams. And I'm personally guilty of that as well, where you might have that hot agent. So you're loving on them and you're making sure that they're whatever they may be, but there might be a life change. There might be something that shifts or alters through that. So then you're still loving on them, or you're still thinking that they're going to put up the same numbers that they put up. And then that is actually going to affect your numbers as a whole. So if you're not moving those hot leads through, if you're not moving those agents through, which you want to keep every agent and you want to have every hot lead transact. But the reality is that some people, there is attrition on that side of things. And if you're not focused on that, you have this false sense that you're going to sell 40 homes, or you have this false sense that the agents on your team, you have 40 agents on your team are all going to sell 10 homes and you're going to sell 400 that year as a result of it. And the reality is, if you go in an audit, you'll find that, maybe 10 people on your team are only selling 2 homes per year. And should those people be around you? Do those people deserve it? Does that bring down the culture of the 30 people that are selling 10 plus, 12 plus, 15, 18 plus? So, and I see it as an agent. I see it as an owner. Elon Musk is dealing with it right now with Twitter. He's running, he's bringing people, he's running, it's chaotic, but it's a process that is important to make sure that you're growing.
Yeah. So again, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, right? And for the listeners, right? So it's just the big piece to get clear here is obviously to be successful with a team, you need great players. It is getting to the point where you will knowing you have attrition, right? You're going to have, people who, people who come and go, but it's going through the play, going through these people and keeping the best of the best only, and removing, the lower players, right? So it's you're constantly top grading. Essentially,
Goldman Sachs lays off 10% every single year. Doesn't matter how great that lower 10% is. They just know they'll continue to grow and grow and grow in doing that. So it's that concept. Us personally, we don't lay the people off. We just don't love on them as much coaching wise. They lose leads. They certain things come off of that. And I just think that we call it our dream team. So people don't focus in on their dream team. Who's their dream team of clients? Who's their dream team of agents if they're building a team? And that's honestly the issue, because you're operationally, whether you feel it or not, that body count, whether it's 5 agents and you have 1 admin and 2 of them are dogs, or it's 30 agents and 8 of them are dogs and you have 4 admin, they're stressing the system.
You're saying the quote dogs, or the players or the people who aren't playing, right, are stressing the system unnecessarily.
And they're giving the team leader that false thought that they are going to transact, when no matter what, they may not. And that's to kind of tie it back to the lead sources, or to the leads in your hot leads. That's what's happening with the agents. I have agents that are like, hey, I have 7 clients that missed out on 3 bidding wars each. And I'm like, you're either not having the right conversations with your clients, so they're not transacting and not winning the bidding wars, or they're not real buyers and you have a false sense of security thinking that they're going to transact and they're not actually hot buyers, and you should probably move them over to your nurture bucket and go find more people that need to buy today because they just had twins and they live in a studio apartment and they don't care what the interest rates are, and they're getting ignored in your database because of that. That's kind of what I mean. It's it creates this, people just think that bodies, or people think that leads are solving problems, and that's not the reality. So I feel like that's a big mistake that I see in general, whether you're a team leader or a solo agent.
Understood. So let's take it to the point where okay, you partnered with your buddy. So you partnered with Eric. Okay.
Yep.
What was the first hire in building the team between the two of you guys?
So he was my buyer's agent at the time. We brought on this first gal. Her name was Kayla. We brought her on. Great girl, just wasn't right for the hire. We had to let her go 6 weeks into that. She was just all administrative. Then I hired another one after that. I think that she lasted 9 months, was not the right hire. And then we went virtual. We had VAs, which were local. We had a local VA that lived in Hoboken, but wouldn't work out of the office. She was great. We used her for, I want to say, a year or two. And then that's where we started hitting that like 80, we brought on Jason Joseph. He's our chief of staff now, but he came in, I think it was 2018, June 2018. And that's when we said, all right, let's hammer the accelerator and let's go. Let's build a big team. Before that, we had always stayed on the small side of things.
Got it. So just again, make sure people are hearing you right. So it's like, it was you had a buyer's agent, and then you went administrative, and it was really just the three of you up until you hit what point? And then
I went on a staff tangent there. So no, it was me, buyer's agent, Eric Goldfarb. He was able to take listings as well. One staff member. And then Andrew Cassie, Eric Eckhart, who's here, I think he came on, and Dan Spitz. And those were like my five that we ran with one admin, and then turned it into one VA for a while. And we kind of stayed Navy SEAL-ish while bringing a couple more in and making some wrong hires in the background there. But that was that's my core. I call those my OGs.
And again, as someone who they're doing 10 to 20 mil, would you recommend that they go admin first, or would you recommend a buyer's agent first? Like if you're in their shoes now, going back and saying, like, how do I get to Brett faster? Would you have hired administrative quicker? Would you have hired buyer's agent, more agents faster? What do you feel like?
I think that depends on what, going back to that goal, you want to be an individualistic based team, or do you want to be a political team based team? For the team aspect of things, I think that the agent growth is more important, in which case that's something that I personally can control. Like I can love on an agent and help them hit their goals because that's how I'm programmed. That's what I love doing. So I can go wider on agents and then rely on virtual assistants to support them with like transaction paperwork and stuff like that. If you're an individualistic and you're selling 120 homes yourself, yet trying to train these people to sell homes and stuff like that too, you're going to need a heavier staff. I was going to say my best year personally, I think I sold 40, maybe 45 homes. Like I never got into those crazy numbers. So even before I stepped off production, I was able to sell, still 40, I would still sell 40-ish homes, 32, 40 homes without really putting a ton of hours into it, because it was very easy for me to handle that. And then that way I was able to focus on the agents on that side of things.
So for yourself now, let's just talk about vision, like, for the foreseeable future, like what is the vision for your team and or yourself?
Yeah, we're taking over the world. We have so we opened a brick and mortar an EXP office in Morristown, New Jersey. That worked really well. We have another one opening soon, hopefully February 1st in Hoboken. And then we have Red Bank, New Brunswick, and Bergen County coming up as well. So that's our model. I mean, we want to scale to, more of a 300 agent team. I talked to you, we've thrown around the idea of getting rid of the Sakura brand or the Sakura name and more so going to a larger parent company. But that is, I feel now more than ever, agents need help and they're not getting it from their brokers. We're seeing that based on the amount of phone calls that I get all day. And we're talking about how do we love on people in our downline here at EXP and make sure that they get a great experience out of this world of real estate? How do I love on my Navy SEALs that are all on my team? And then how do I love on the in the middles as well? And that's the video game we're playing right now, where it becomes super scalable for us.
So a 300 person team, do you see that as, for someone who would, maybe aspires to do the same? What do you feel like is maybe 2 or 3 steps that you're looking at taking to get you there?
I mean, we've always been growing just on profit. That right now, as we're feeling the strains of the market, the transaction count is definitely, it's a thing. I mean, we're not hitting the same trajectory that we were because there's less homes to sell and the interest rates are up and whatnot. So yeah, for me, that's it's capital. Capital is definitely a big play on it. And I go back and forth. Do I want to take debt on to move this thing forward, or just play it safe and keep running the way that I'm running? So I would say that's our big thing. We spent probably the last 2 years building out the org chart to support it, where we have the key players in place in each department that then hire support underneath them. So, chief of staff, chief of operations, chief marketing officer. And then that way the whole thing can just scale with them, as opposed to, and executive admin, Darren, as opposed to, having to go find those people as we're going. So we're set up for it. We have the org chart for it, and it's easy on that side of things.
What do you do now that works the best for attraction, right? Like just attracting the right people agent wise.
So I was on a Zoom yesterday and somebody asked me that exact same question. And what works the best is being the best version of yourself. Mine's truly attraction. People ask me, do I make cold calls? Do I do this? I'm like, no, I literally am the best version of myself as often as I can be. I have off days and everything like that. And I try to lead with agent success, as a forefront of how I move through the world. And a byproduct of that, and I make noise around it, don't get me wrong. I have social media, all that stuff. I do that part of it. But a byproduct of that is people reach out and say, how can we do this? How can we partner with you? How can we align with you? And I give. People ask me questions all the time that are not a part of my family and may never be a part of my family. And I don't need them to be. But I can tell you that I get calls from people saying, hey, I'm thinking about coming here. And I wanted to call you because you've always answered my call, regardless of how busy you are. And you are always there to run through any scenarios with me and blah, 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 blah. So a good book, I don't know if you ever read it, it's called The Go-Giver. But that, if anybody's who's listening, go read that. That's like my core programming. I give with no thought of reciprocation in any way, shape, or form. I know the universe will repay me in a different way without getting too hokey, but that is it. And I think that people can sense that. The consumer could always sense that as a seller too. I never needed their listing. I never needed them to buy a home. I didn't care if they bought and I didn't care if they sold. I didn't care if they listed with their family member. It did not make a difference to me. I went in there, I presented with data. I didn't have hard closes and they were able to make whatever decision they wanted to make based on whatever I showed them. And they sensed that. And because of that, they more times than not worked with me.
What do you feel like you're seeing right now in the market? And how are you and your team adjusting?
Yeah, so we have, our average price point is probably $650 or so. We deal with, I just was talking to Anthony Baroni to closing at 300,000 or so. We have lower price points. We have closings at 4 million. So we're kind of all over the place. Inventory is a really tough thing to come by right now. And with homes that are actually like what a buyer would want to pay top dollar for. So the sales are still happening left and right. But if the home is, renovated with white oak floors and, shaker cabinets in the kitchen and a quartz countertop, it's going to be crazy, but just like basic stuff. They don't want to get into a home that hasn't had a dollar put into it since 2003 and being told that it had a gut reno. So those homes are not coming on the market too often, and our buyers will still transact when they come up. So the market shift that we've seen is like that. And what I'm telling the agents to do is you have to go hunt for it. You have to be a solution to the consumer's problem. And if a buyer can't find a property, they don't need you to call them and tell them that the interest rate came down 0.5%. They need you to call them and tell them that you've been scouring the neighborhood for properties for them. And I have an option at 123 Main Street. They would sell if you'd consider 750. Here are some photos when I was on the MLS last time. And then I also have 187 Main Street. They too would consider selling at 689. Oh, and good news, the rates have come down 0.5%. Like that's a value and you're solving an actual problem. The flip side of that too is the seller isn't getting calls like they used to get. I don't know. I feel like COVID broke the world, dude. Like you and I, again, we're like phone gangsters from back in the day. I'm in the office right now. Eric Eckhart's hammering through expireds this morning and the office is just kind of, quiet aside from that. And like, I just don't get it. I think a lot of people are paralyzed right now from the good years in 2020 and 2021, 2022, when honestly, I feel like to me, it's easier to transact at a higher volume today than it was back then for two reasons. You have the freedom of time, which didn't exist back then because you actually were running around. Like if you're a buyer's agent, for instance, you had to drop what you were doing, get your client into the property, get an offer out right away. Like the sense of urgency was insane and it was very real. So the idea of a schedule was completely like blown out the window. Your quality of life was completely blown out the window unless you had support and stuff around you. That is like the one aspect of it where you can develop a really good badass schedule for yourself right now. And if you have the discipline to stick to it, which a lot of agents don't, you are going to absolutely thrive. And the second part of that is the skills. I'd rather it be way worse than it is right now because how many people call me because of the conversations and the value that I've provided without expecting anything in return year over year, that when they're scared, when COVID hit, like I'm their beacon. I want to be that for somebody. And there are a lot of times where people are saying, hey, my sister-in-law got her real estate license, so she's going to list our property. I'm like, that's cool. I get a call 2 years later and they're like, hey, it's not selling. Or it's not that, can you come in and help and give my sister-in-law a referral or something like that? That's more of what we're going to start seeing right now. And I think that to me, having skills and having focused on skills like you did is like doing the role play, making sure that you're loving on people with the skills to back it up and the experience to back it up. It's a big differentiator in a down market.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel with the market shifting, it's really become a crazy separator of skills. The people who have true skills are doing just fine. And the people who were, getting the family referrals every now and again and, breezing by in the last few years, it's the chickens have come to roost.
And they're feeling it too. Those agents that were they're also reaching out, asking like, hey, what do we do? It's like, pick up your phone.
It's interesting how like the answer is always kind of just prospect more.
I don't know how people do it, but it's like be in conversations with new people, whether it's through DMs on Instagram. The phone I think is the best. Face to face is the best, but the phone, then you have DMs and all that. I don't care how you do it, but just make sure that every single day you're having conversations with people, however it is, if it's a networking event, whatever. Happy hour, I don't care. Donating, or doing volunteer work at a hospital, I don't care. But make sure that you're tracking and counting the conversations you're having. Because a lot of people feel like they're working and they're really not.
Let's shift a little bit here. Let's go back to beginning, like Brett before real estate. Do you feel like knowing everything you know about this industry that you would have chose real estate again? Because there's a lot of people who are like, I want to start a business, and I'm like, I wouldn't get into real estate.
The people who watch this, is it more so realtors, or do you get like homeowners and stuff like that, or just so I know how to tailor that answer?
No, listen, I just genuinely from your heart, man. I mean, like, listen, it's it's a mix.
From my heart, I don't think that there are many industries in the world where you can make what you can make in this for doing what you're doing. I jokingly say we get paid too much to do what we do. That's why I was asking, like, who's kind of watching this?
Mostly realtors, don't worry.
And even for sellers, they don't see what really goes into it and what that is behind it. And a lot of times they do too. But I owned a landscaping company. I didn't go to college. I sold that landscaping company in 2007 when I was 21 years old to a company called Greenscapes in Roxbury. That was hard work. Like that was like my Sundays were like driving the dump truck to go get mulch piles and dirt and setting up job sites and then getting to them at like 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning. And then I was also like the last guy getting back home, cleaning the equipment off. And I had 7 people on staff too. It was decent. I had 3 trucks and stuff, but it was like me. I led with them having a good experience, but I was the one who felt it, where I'm getting back to the house and leaving my trucks and stuff, and like literally with headlights on them in the dark, like washing the mowers off and changing the mower blades and stuff like that. So I hadn't hit that scale where really have a massive operation and good quality of life. That was hard freaking work. So that's why I always joke, and I'm like, you can sell a house for $800,000 and it's 20,000 GCI at a 2.5% commission. And obviously getting listings at 800,000 buyers, it's not the easiest thing to do. But when you get pretty far into it and you kind of see it from my side, it wouldn't be that, like, if I dissolved my whole team, I could very easily sell 50 homes a year at 800,000 a piece. And it's a lot of money. So yeah, I think that's what people don't realize. So what I tell them to do, like when you're getting your real estate license or when you got your real estate license, think about what you were dreaming about when you swiped that credit card to pay the $400 for school. What did you want out of this career then? And let's get you back over to that, because people lose that so quickly. And it goes back to like what I'm saying, the individual agent that is sitting on their couch and isn't in the office and isn't hitting, expires, and doesn't realize how fast time flies and how quickly bills come back around every 30 days. So if I could go back into it, you and I spoke about this. I'm doing a lot more in the commercial world right now. I personally would have focused on probably a higher price point, less transaction count. I have the ability, and I'm coaching my agents now too, to use that as they transform into commercial. And anybody watching, if reach out to Henry or myself if you have interest in getting into like $10 million plus deals. But yeah, I would still be in real estate. Real estate's not a good time to be in crypto. I'm not, thank God I'm not the crypto guy. Thank God I'm not Sam Friedman. But yeah,
I just like, the reason why I ask is like, I feel like there's just so many options, right? Like it's not drop shipping in this company and that company and this, like, it's just like, I feel like so many young people these days, or just even people in general who are like, what do I want to do to make some good money? Right? Like, oh, well, this guy's making, quote $1 million a year doing this, or, making money doing that. And like, I agree with you. Like, I think I would have chose really, thankfully I fell into this amazing industry. I would choose it over and over again. I agree. I think that the opportunity that they have in this business to create an incredible income is unlimited. And it's, the barrier of entry is zero. And there's not a lot of skill sets I feel like you need to learn, unlike most other industries. I feel like anybody can do very well in this business. So I appreciate that. Question: What about your take on? Do you see the value in primarily focusing on the investment side, or do you prefer the realtor side, and why?
Yeah. So me personally, I don't know if I've but I owned over 80 doors at one point in time. I had 4 rehabs and 2 new constructions going on at once. It was a fairly complicated world that I was in. And since then, and this is kind of what drove the larger price point multifamily commercial aspect of things, I started doing syndications. So I've been selling out of my stuff and getting into more of the syndication side of things. And then I may syndicate myself one day. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm in on the discovery side of things. But what I will tell you, and this ties into what you're talking about with like shiny objects and how to make money here or there, blah, 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 is what I found is that I have to stay laser focused on what makes me money day to day. And the more laser focused I am on that, the less time I spend operating investment properties and stuff and flips and becoming the GC because I hired the wrong GC. That's which has happened and happens to a lot of people. That whole thing, like, make as much money as you can doing one thing and invest in other things to bring in other streams of income. Don't spread yourself too thin until you get to the point where you can, like my residential real estate team, I can focus on commercial because it ties in really well to what I do residential. It's the same. It's pick up the damn phone, call people, just with a couple more zeros attached to the end of it. But like that's still 100% in my lane. Whereas like for me to go off and do the flips, I'd rather be a hard money lender on flips. I'd rather look at a deal and figure out where I am LTV wise, or, we've talked about this, just wholesaling. I think that's a good, you're not getting too tied up into it. And wholesaling ties in really well with being a realtor as well, because you could always just flip it up, get a referral or something like that too, if it's out of your area. Or sell.
Yeah, no, I love that you tied it back to that, because I feel like so many people get starry-eyed, and I'm guilty of it, where it's like you think that the investment world or this way of doing business or so is going to be some drastic income shift, where it's actually just another job. And yeah, you'll pay you can be paid decently well for the job, but now you're taking your eye off the prize. And it's like, listen, in both of our businesses, like, dude, if we just 2 or 3x our current active income, like, I don't need another fucking job. You know what I mean? Like, we just, if I just 2 to 3x my current income, like, I'm good, right? Like, I don't need a whole different company, right? It's just really double down on what we do best. What about more so now, taking the mindset you have when it comes to business? How are you, like, and I know you have younger kids, but I'm just curious, like, how do you feel like you're applying it with what you're talking to your kids about, and like what you plan on talking to your kids about? Obviously, I know they're young.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Kevin Eldred is my coach with Mike Ferry, and my call right before this, we were literally talking about that. And he was saying how well-behaved his kids are and stuff as a result of the way that he, had taught them. I think that for me, I'm here to support my children in whatever way they want to go, but they're definitely gonna know about real estate investing. Let's put it that way. Whatever they want to do, I'm here. I've got their back. I will fully support them, but there will definitely be a strong real estate tone. Honestly, I didn't know, and they always joke now about how they don't teach us in school stuff, but I didn't know what the IRS was, or even like, I didn't know. I thought if you missed an IRS payment that you'd get arrested the next day. And I didn't know that. And I'm not saying miss IRS payments, but like that fear of not knowing creates an unnecessary stress, which then stops you from doing what you need to be doing day in and day out to make money, to make the IRS not a big scary person. I didn't know that. And the reason I bring this up is not everything was always fine and dandy. I fell behind with the IRS back in like early 2010 before I really started selling homes and stuff. I didn't know that there were like payment plans available, and like that the IRS isn't trying to put you in jail. They're trying to like get paid, but you can get penalties knocked off and blah, blah, blah. I hope I never have to have that conversation with my kids, but I'm just saying, like, there's so many things. There's good debt, there's bad debt. There's so many things that are not taught to us throughout our life that are just, even bankruptcies. Like, I've never had to file bankruptcy. I've never been in that scenario. But like, I also see people too where like it might make sense to file for bankruptcy and try to, cut debt and write things off and move on and build. Or, I just taking a practical approach around business, and if there's an opportunity, how to move on that, how to use debt in a good way to, 100x your return on it. Like just getting into all of those conversations, those will definitely be part of, the dinner table talks and stuff with my kid. And Jeff Van Note's a good buddy of mine. I don't know if you know him. His son's always around and he's in on all these conversations. He does a lot of commercial lending. And he told me that, maybe when Mac was 2 months old. I brought him outside. He's like, dude, take him everywhere with you. Let him sit in the office. Let him hear these conversations. It's going to educate him from and his son, I think, was 32 months old at that time. It wasn't even 3 years. He's like, the amount of stuff the way that he has conversations with people already is night and day versus a lot of the kids that aren't in that same room.
I like that a lot, man. That's super valuable. It's interesting because it's like, it makes me wonder for my kids, because it's like, obviously what we do, it's a big part of it is to, as an active income so that we can live the life we desire and provide, right? And then there's also a piece of this is like, what do you want your legacy to be? Like, if you died tomorrow, your kids are not going to remember the company, right? Like, no, they're not going to remember that. So it's just like, it's that balance. And I love to, before we dive into a couple final questions, I'd love to kind of get an understanding of like, what do you feel like are some, maybe like your most valuable business advice that you've ever learned? Not that you'd give to somebody, but that you've ever learned.
It's not a common thing that I feel like is talked about in our world that I found out about. My father-in-law is a financial planner, but you could have a whole stock portfolio, and I'd have a lot more money had I done this. Had I taken my money in 2013 when I started investing in real estate and started to just invest in the stock market through that, even just the S&P 500, and let it grow up through that. I didn't realize you could open a line of credit against your brokerage account. And the lines of credit are like last year, my interest was like 1.75% interest only, which we use that to go into syndications and then paid that down. So what I talk about, good debt versus bad debt, that's one thing that like my net worth could be significantly higher than it is today had I known that was something back in like 2013 to start investing into, because then I would have just been tapping that, not selling off stocks. They'd all still keep growing. Then I'd be paying off the line of credit, or like with the syndications, I'm earning between 7 and 20%, but I'm borrowing at 1.75. There's a good arbitrage in there too. So having the right investment vehicles and the right plans and making sure that you do it in a right way where you really snowball net worth and not get into the wrong investments also. I mean, that honestly to me is like where I wouldn't say I went wrong, but I didn't do it as efficiently and as effectively as I could have done.
So what would you have done differently? You feel like you would have just let it ride in the stock world and invested slowly but surely kind of thing?
Yeah, I would have been invested in the market, in the stock market, and then pulling from that line of credit to be buying investment properties and stuff like that as well at way better interest rates than what I was getting from hard money lenders. I mean, my first hard money loan was 14.4. I was paying 18% on it in 1 year. So, I definitely wouldn't be doing that. And I think for me as well, I probably would have never gotten into the flipping game personally. That everybody tells you that's a job. It 1,000% is a job. And talk about shiny object. I would chase that $100,000 return, in 9 months or in a year, or I'd go after $200,000 or something like that. And it's amazing what the IRS takes after that. And it's amazing how much time goes into making those things work. Whereas I could have just bought, 1-bedroom condos every year in Hoboken, and I'd have 10 condos right now worth $5 million or something like that. So
sure.
Just stuff like that, like having an actual plan and really calculating like how, and that's how the big guys do it, in the syndication worlds, that like they're heavy debt, but heavily calculated on how that's going to perform and heavily calculated on whether or not that's the best place for them to have money. Even that, like talking about, I had enough real estate to be considered a real estate professional in the tax code side of things, and still spent enough time in it, based on what I own. But like, I didn't even pay attention to bonus depreciation or any of those tax benefits too, that like are there for you to use. Like the tax code's written, they're always changing things up and stuff like that. But it took me 3 years to jump into that, where you're getting, massive write-offs against your income. I just bought a heavy truck this year that is able to be depreciated quite a bit year one as well. And that again, so just looking at everything, where like I was chasing making money and I wasn't chasing keeping money. And you talk about like business planning and stuff like that and having that legacy. My coaching call prior to this with Kevin Albert, we're figuring out where will I be in 18 years? And that's when both my kids are in college. And we're mapping out like net worth plans and passive income plans and stuff like that for there. And I feel like every realtor can do this regardless of what their income is. The biggest adjustment we made was not making more money. It was adjusting the money we spend and the money we keep. It's interesting how many purchases my wife and I made $300 and less in the last 60 days. That tallied up to a pretty decent amount of money. That didn't need to happen. Amazon order, new clothes for the kids for Christmas. I mean, I would do, I want the kids to have nice clothes for Christmas and stuff. But you know what I mean? It all adds up. A lunch at Mamoon's, that's $18 versus getting the $8 shawarma. Like little things, but just thinking every single day, it goes back to it's that compounding effect where if you make those adjustments, you find that you have a surplus of money each month and you're able to invest that.
So freaking powerful, because it's like, what's interesting? There's so many real estate agents out there where like, I feel like it's just such a secret thing where, number one, about like, actually, like, this industry is completely, like, I almost feel like it's super fake. Like, no one actually talks about the real stuff that actually matters, right? Like, everyone's about volume, right? There's no talk about like, okay, what was your net income? Like, you're celebrated for volume, and like, no one actually knows that you could actually be broke and you're celebrated. And I think it's such a fascinating thing in this industry. We're also the only industry where I feel like we just gloat about how much we sold. Like, it's like you see a bunch of restaurants saying, hey, we did 3 million this year, and they have a big post about how much money they made, right? Like, it's just such a strange industry that does that. And I'm really happy that you talk. I think that's one sentence that is worth repeating, which is focus on keeping money, not on making it, or not just on making it. Because obviously I think it's incredibly important to make it, but yeah, it's like the more so focus on keeping it, because I made that mistake. I mean, I remember, I was, 24, 25, 26 years old doing $100,000 months, but my overhead was so much because I had an unnecessarily large team. And like, by the time you really break down what you're making, and you're like, I wasn't paying attention to that either, right? Like those were some big mistakes that I was making too. Big shift that I've made over the last 18 months, which is just focus on keeping it, because I'd rather have $1 million in the bank than worry about selling $1 million a year in properties. It just way more valuable. Super valuable stuff today, man. Let's end it off with two things. Number one, specifically, you're talking to yourself, called almost 10 years ago when you got into this industry. You can give them one or two principles to live by. Maybe not even things you would do, but just principles to live by. What would you say?
Again, same with budget, everything like that, but measuring what you're doing and having that awareness around it. I find that so many people feel like they worked. And I was guilty of it. I got it in 2007, 15 years ago. And I felt like I was working and realized that there was no money coming, but nobody was there to tell me that I wasn't actually working until, 7 months in, where I switched companies and stuff like that. So be careful of that. If you're newly licensed, or you're not making the money that you want to be making, is there anybody behind you that's auditing you to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing? It goes back to the team side of things. And then if there isn't, making sure that like you're actually around the right people that are going to do that for you. One of my favorite questions is, and everybody should ask themselves this, who is around them right now, making sure that, at the real estate brokerage, wherever they are, whatever team they're on, whatever, making sure that 2023 is the best year of their life. And it's so interesting how many people are like, shit, my broker only calls me when I tell them I'm leaving. Like that's when they care about me. So it's like, no, let's ride the wave. So yeah, getting back to like the basics of making sure that you're playing all out, auditing your time and stuff like that. But then making sure, and it's the same way I talk about with the investment side of things and snowballing money and stuff like that. Make sure that your time is being used in the best way, and you have a true, practical, true to yourself business plan that empowers you day in and day out, that you didn't just read a book and write it because that's somebody else's business plan. Like, it has to work for you so that you're moving forward every single day.
I'm going to leave you with one quick question. What are you working on right now, business related or not?
My big thing is like a oneness kind of tech play that changes agent experience. I've seen so much money thrown at tech. Compass is a perfect example of it. But doesn't actually solve agent problems. So basically that's what we're doing with our systems. We're building them for the SKOOL group, but then that parent company is going to open them up for other teams to operate off of. And it's things that are like truly important, like having a badass transaction coordinating team, per state that people can use with it branded to them, and having a badass marketing division that has templates and whatnot with it branded to their team, and tapping into, coaching calls and stuff like that too, that people can come into and be a part of, but not have to pay $1,500 a month to Tom Ferry coaching or something like that. So that's kind of what we're doing, is creating that whole ecosystem right now where people can come in and perform at a higher level than they are, or at the same level while working less with less stress, whatever the goals may be. But that's my purpose right now. That's what I'm doing. And then also, the family side of things, then my kids and my wife are like they're my everything. Nobody messes with that.
Listen, man, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for sharing everything today. Thank you for being super real and sharing everything. I think there was a lot of, I took a ton of notes today. I hope everyone else got a lot out of this. And for those of you guys watching, before we sign off, listen, reach out to Brett. I mean, like, again, he's building, an unbelievable machine to support people that just like you listening to this. Me and Brett do a lot of work together. So reach out to us. We want to support you. That's why we put out content like this. And other than that, if you have any comments, questions, or anything like that, put in the comment section below, like the video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care, everyone. And thanks again, Brett.